All right, guys, $100,000. That is a lot of money. And we're going to be talking about how you can save your first $100,000 as quickly as possible. And I'm going to do that by sharing the tips and strategies that I used to be able to save $100,000 by about the age of 27, 28. And despite having no real job, so I didn't have an actual 9-to-5 steady job the entire time. I was a freelancer pretty much that entire period. My income fluctuated from as low as $19,000 some years up to $50,000, $60,000 some years. But keep in mind, I was also living in Los Angeles, which is a freakishly expensive city. So I'm going to be sharing with you how I was able to save 100 grand and how you can too. So we're going to talk about what I focused on, what's going to help you really begin to make that traction. And I'm also going to be sharing a few things that I learned along the way and a few things that I wish I had known earlier that I think would have helped me get there even faster. Before we get started, make sure you smash that like button for me, hit the subscribe button, and let's get going. $100,000. The reason why this is so important is because this $100,000 really is, in my opinion, the first major benchmark or landmark in your savings and your financial future. Because that $100,000 is really the hardest thing to get to. And once you get there, the reason why it starts getting easier is because now you have enough money to where once you start investing, you can actually make significant gains. What I mean by that is, let's say you have $10,000. That's great, congratulations, and that's a good amount of money. However, let's say you take that $10,000 and you decide to invest it in the market. And let's say you're getting a 10% return per year, which is on average around what the S&P 500 has, done over its history. Well, if you're investing $10,000 and getting a 10% return each year, that only brings you about $1,000 a year. That's less than $100 a month. So while that's great and it's going to help towards your goals, it's not going to make any significant gain or difference. Versus if you have $100,000 and you're getting a 10% return, well, now you're making $10,000 a year, which is almost an extra $1,000 a month. That is when you start to make some actual difference in your ability to start saving even more and compounding over time. Let's kind of talk about how I was able to save this first $100,000, some of the strategies that I use and things that you should be focusing on so that you can crush it as well. So the very first thing, and I don't care where you're at in your investing journey, where you're at in your savings journey, your financial journey, the thing that's so important in your ability to create success is going to be budgeting. You have to have a plan for your money. Listen, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. That's it. I mean, no one accidentally gets successful financially. It takes a lot of diligence and it takes a lot of focus and determination. So when I first moved to LA, I had $400. I had no job. I was starting from scratch. And I had no idea how much money I was going to make from time to time. Some months I made more, some months I did not make as much. And that was because I was a freelancer. I didn't have a 9-to-5 steady paycheck job. And so every month would be different. So budgeting was one of the biggest things that really helped me start to make that traction. Now, when it comes to budgeting, there's so many things you can focus on, but really, I think there's only 3 main things that you really need to pay the most attention to. Number 1 is housing costs. Your housing costs are going to absolutely be probably your biggest expense, probably outside of taxes, depending on how much you make, but it's going to be your biggest expense over the course of your year. Most people spend well over what they should be spending. I know here in California, the average Angelina spends somewhere between 50 and 60% of their income on rent, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, I know it's super expensive here, but it's going to be so hard to get ahead financially if 50, 60% of your income is going towards rent. So how much should you be spending on rent? Well, from a financial standpoint, you should be spending no more than 25 to 33% of your income. If it's more than that, I would highly recommend, getting a roommate, sharing your place with somebody. If you have parents nearby and you don't mind living with them, move back in with your parents, but do something, or downsize. If you got a 2-bedroom apartment right now and it's just you, find a 1-bedroom. But you should not be spending more than 25 to 33% of your income. Now, for me, that was difficult. My rent was usually as low as $365 a month, which helped me out a ton. My first year, I think I made $19,000. Around my second to third year living out in LA, I started making closer to around $40,000 a year. So paying $365 a month when I'm making, a little over $3,000 a month, that was only 10%. And so that was something that really astronomically helped me begin saving money, despite the fact that I wasn't really making all that much money. I had to get kind of extreme. My first year, I slept on couches, and the second year, I graduated from that to sharing a one bedroom with 3 different guys. Now, the second thing that I focused on was food. Outside of housing, food is another one of those things that can really creep up on you. And if you're not careful, really can be a major expense. Here's what I'd recommend. Go through the last 3 to 6 months of your grocery budget, eating out in groceries, so your food budget. Then ask yourself, how can I cut this down by 10 or 20%? Set a goal for yourself. Say, you know what? Normally I spend $600 a month on food. I'm going to try spending $400 a month, and then break it down. $400 a month, that's $100 a week. And then if you want to break it down even more to get more precise, break it down by day, break it down by meal. And for me, because I had such a specific goal of buying my first rental property as quickly as possible, I decided to really challenge myself. And what I did was I decided to live off of $5 a day. $1 for breakfast, $1 to $2 for lunch, $2 to $3 for dinner. So what I did was I created a massive spreadsheet, and I began listing all the items that I bought at the grocery store. And I would figure out how many servings I would get from it and how much the cost was, and that helped me understand the price per serving. Certain things I found that if I had a couple eggs and a couple slices of toast, that usually averaged out to like 92 cents, obviously depending on like the brands that I bought. For lunch, I would usually do kind of like a protein shake, or I would get these like frozen burritos. Yes, I know it's disgusting. Frozen burritos and like some rice and stuff. And then that came out to usually like $1 to $2. And then for dinner, I would get, a big thing of chicken breast. I would buy, a broccoli, rice, and I'd find things that were, more filling and cost effective. But being so diligent on making sure that I did not spend over $5 a day on my food, sometimes $6, that really helped me out a ton. I did not eat out. If I ever did treat myself, it was to the dollar menu at some place like McDonald's. Remember, failing to plan is planning to fail. The third thing that I focused on was my automobile expenses. A lot of people get stuck in that trap of, spending $300, $400, $500 a month on their automobile, which, is fine if you're making a lot more income. But if you do not make a lot of money and you're not adequately saving, you need to figure out how you can make that change. I was very fortunate in the fact that in college, a few years prior of moving out to LA, I had bought it was a 2002 Jetta that I'd gotten for, I think it was $6,500. My monthly payments were like $165. And I quickly tried to pay that off as fast as I could to get rid of that payment, which allowed me to even lower my car insurance to just, basic liability only coverage. That way I could cut down that expense a little bit. So right now, if you're not saving money and you make a decent amount, you may have to look at downsizing for a little bit. You maybe get a cheaper car or figure out some way of kind of making that turnaround happen. Now, between those 3 things, over the first 2 years, I think my first year, making $19,000, I managed to save $9,000 of that. And then my second year, I believe I made somewhere between $45,000 or $50,000. And by about the 2.5 years into this thing, I had managed to save about $40,000. So that was kind of a big thing right there. Once I saved that first $40,000, that's when I made my first real estate investment. And so I started kind of learning to increase my income a little bit. That first investment I made started getting me an extra couple $100 a month on top of what I was already doing. And I started figuring out more consistently how to make a little bit more. So I was making $40,000, $50,000. I was no longer making $19,000, $20,000. There's a few things that I learned that I want to kind of share with you really fast. Is number one, it's going to be really important to pay yourself first. When you budget, one of the biggest tips and strategies that I learned that really helped me was you need to budget for saving. If you do not plan to save, you're not going to save more than likely. So what I did was I took the amount of money I made per month, and before I even broke down my expenses, I said, I'm going to save X number of dollars a month. So let's say my take-home pay was $3,000, and I decided that I was going to save at least 10 or 20% of my income. Then you would take that $3,000, let's say you take 10% of that, which would be $300. and you would subtract 300 from the 3,000, leaving you with $2,700. It means that you need to live off the remaining $2,700. That's going to be a huge tip and a huge benefit for helping you save money. You got to pay yourself first. The other thing I'd highly recommend is make sure you automate your savings. One thing that's going to really help you out is, maybe open up a separate bank account that is not in the banking that you normally use, and make sure every month you have an auto withdrawal that goes into that account. Now, I want to talk really quickly about a few of the mistakes that I made and some things that would have helped me do this faster and honestly probably enjoy my life a little bit more. The biggest thing being was that even though I learned how to master frugality, that was also the very thing that kind of kept me from thinking bigger and thinking expansion. Yeah, frugality is great, but you got to learn how to begin making more money. And one of the things I really regret looking back on my journey was not focusing on learning how to expand my income and really magnify how much I was making. It would have been so much easier if I had learned to double my income through various skills and stuff, where I could have actually lived a little nicer and still crushed my goals. So what do I mean by that? Well, I had such a mindset of frugality of just like, I can't spend any money. I mean, literally, I would never go out. I never spent money on clothes, hardly ever spent money eating out. I was kind of more of a scarcity mindset. So the biggest thing I would recommend is if you're on your journey to saving $100,000, absolutely, you need to have a budget. You need to really stay focused. But more importantly, you need to start figuring out, how can I earn more money? Listen, you can't live in a shoebox your whole life. I'm telling you, it's really taxing, and you've got to learn how to really focus and really expand those means. So that would be my biggest tip on, if I had to go back over, I would really start focusing on how to begin earning more money and at the same time keep my budget. And that would have probably allowed me to save $100,000 in just a couple years. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's the main things that I focus on. Honestly, pretty simple, but basically over the years, as I kept doing that, I just kept repeating the process. I started investing a little bit of real estate, got a few hundred extra bucks a month with that. I honestly, for the first 4, 5, 6 years, I really just focused on my budgeting and stuff. And that really was, at the end of the day, what allowed me to save $100,000. But anyways, I hope this video helped you out. Thank you so much for watching this. Make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button for me. It would mean the world to me. Let's get out there and let's crush it.